How we doing, everybody? Welcome to today's webinar. I am your host, Jose Barton, also known as Joe Barton, Barton Publishing. And we got Dr. Scott Saunders here calling in from, kind of looks like you're on a beach in Hawaii there, Scott.
Nope, Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara, not in Hawaii.
Okay.
Yeah.
That looks like maybe a window behind you or possibly a TV monitor.
Oh no, that is a painting of a. You're so used to TV monitors, you don't even realize it's a painting. You know, one of those things that people used to do. They used to paint.
One of those art things. I'm not familiar.
That's so weird. But that is the coast, really close to where I am.
Oh, very nice, beautiful. The coast where I am is across the street from a creek that eroded the hill into our road, and it's been closed for 2 years. So that's
oh, that's right. I saw that. Yeah,
that's not quite as tropical. It's more of a muddy creek. Well, welcome everybody. Good to see. We got Alan, Andy, Anna, Bonnie, Carol, Cheryl, Claire, Cynthia. Man, we got lots of people today. So welcome. Today, I am just stalling right now because Leslie Prinz is going to be co-hosting here with Dr. Saunders. And I'm going to be in the background, but you know, every once in a while, it's nice to let you guys see a different face on here. So I'm going to quietly just kind of disappear in the background and run a little bit of controls. This is the diabetes reversal webinar, also known as the fixed blood sugar webinar, also known as today we're going to talk about leaky gut syndrome, I believe it is called. And so any questions that you guys have related to diabetes, blood sugar, really anything, but high blood pressure as well, and especially today leaky gut, we're going to get into it. And Leslie and I were both like, you know, we don't know a lot about leaky gut, so let's just turn it right over to Dr. Saunders and tell us what we're getting into here, Dr. Saunders.
Okay, for many years, for decades, if you went to a medical doctor, even a specialist like a gastroenterologist, and you said, I had leaky gut, they'd like laugh. Oh, that's really funny. You have a leaky gut. That's not even real. It's not even a thing. Then somebody started actually doing research on it, and they go, "Oh, I guess it is a thing." Well, then what is leaky gut? And that's kind of, if you know what it is, then you can do something about it. So what I'd like to explain is, first of all, what it is. Leaky gut is literally what it sounds like. It is, your gut is leaky. What does that mean? Well, think of your inside of your intestines as outside of your body. I know it's hard to think of. That's what we'll call that's internal. No, it's actually outside your body. So you're kind of like a donut. You have the body itself is the hand, and then you have the skin on the outside, and then you have the hole on the inside that goes all the way through from your mouth to your anus. And that's actually outside your body. So if you think of it that way, then this leaking makes a lot of sense. If you, when I was 12 years old and I was driving down Brookfield Avenue on my bike, I was going as fast as I could, and I got wobbles and I fell and just got road rash all over, just like everywhere. I was just, I was miserable with, the skin was all taken off and it was really just really painful. But there's one other thing that happens. Now I have leaky skin because I don't have that layer of protection on my skin anymore. I've taken off all the skin, and now the blood and tissue is exposed underneath. So what happens? Well, I can get infections. If I were to put something on there like alcohol, it would go directly into my blood. If I were to put, you know, anything onto that, it would get into the blood directly. Well, that's exactly what's going on in your intestines. But instead of 100 layers of protection you have on your skin, inside your intestines you have one cell thickness. So the whole lining of your intestines is one cell thick. And it makes sense if you think about that. You know, your skin, you don't want to be absorbing all the pollution and everything from outside of you. You want to be able to wash it off. But in your intestines, you want to absorb it. So you don't want a whole bunch of layers that it has to go through in order to get into your blood. You want just one layer, boom, straight into your blood so that you can absorb everything you want. But what happens if that cell layer, that one cell layer, is compromised in some way, like getting a road rash on the inside? How does that work? Well, it literally gets leaky just like it would when you got a road rash on the outside. And how does that happen? Well, anytime you have inflammation in your intestines, then you lose cells, and those cells are supposed to regenerate pretty quickly. And they'll regenerate within hours, usually they'll fix. So it may take 2 weeks for you to repair a road rash on your outside, but on your inside, you could do it in 8 hours. So it's not a long time, but it's only one cell layer. So if you have inflammation, if you're eating things that are toxic to those cells, if you have lectins, there's several doctors now that are talking about how horrible lectins are. Well, they're not really horrible, but they do slow down the reproduction of those cells. So if you have an infectious disease of some kind, or if you have things like celiac disease, which is gluten intolerance, then the inflammation will wear away that lining of the cells, and then you'll have no protection at all. So when you have no protection, you have, instead of these cells that are straight next together, that are tight, you have gaps between them. And so there's two things that happen. One is when you have stuff in the intestines, then your body, the cell says, oh, that's vitamin B12, I need that, and pulls it into the blood. And guess what? There's leaks, so it'll leak back out. So one is you don't get the nutrients that you used to. And then number two, you have stuff in your intestines that's toxic, that you don't want in your blood at all, that you want to go out in the toilet later on. but there's leaky, so that stuff can leak into your blood, and then you have to detoxify that. So everything from your intestines goes straight to your liver and gets detoxified before it goes out. So a lot of people don't notice right away that they have leaky gut. They don't notice they're getting toxic because the liver is doing a good job of detoxifying. But if you overload the liver with too many toxins and too many problems, then you get leaky gut. So
is that diagnosed then? I mean, how are, if I were, it's not funny, but, you know, I frequent a lot of the gut health boards, you know, on social media and stuff like that, just because I've had my own issues, as you know, Dr. Saunders, with some gut stuff. And so I've just been fascinated by how it all works. But when you go into the doctor, I've heard people, you know, who have diarrhea that think they have leaky gut because they think that's what that means, is leaky gut. So I'm just curious, how does one get the diagnosis of leaky gut? How do they go in and see what's actually happening?
So there's a couple of ways of doing that. If you go to a gastroenterologist, they will often put a tube down, an endoscope down into your stomach, and they go into the small intestine, like the duodenum, and they do biopsies. They actually take pieces of your intestines, and they send those pieces to a pathologist. The pathologist looks under the microscope and says, oh, look at that. You got all your cells worn away. You got leaky gut. So that would be one way of doing it. And that's how they diagnose things like celiac disease, which is a worn away lining of the intestines.
So is that not a blood test?
No, that is actual biopsy.
I mean celiac.
Oh yeah, celiac, you can do a blood test that gives you like a 90% accuracy. It's pretty good if it's positive. If it's negative, you're not quite sure, because you could be a little bit, you could have gluten intolerance and have all your blood tests be normal. So it's not necessarily always correct, the test. And the other thing is the genetic test will tell you if you have the propensity or the likelihood of getting leaky gut. But a sure diagnosis, if they take a biopsy and they say, oh yes, you're missing the lining of your intestine, your epithelium in the intestine, then they say absolutely you have leaky gut. The blood test gets you close, so that's the other way, is the blood test. And then the third way is you can do a IgG food sensitivity panel. And it's a panel that tells you if you have reactions, they're called IgG reactions, to food. And it's not allergies, it's reactions. And what that means is if you have IgG, anything that you have IgG antibodies means that that thing has gotten into your blood. And you have to ask, well, how did corn get into my blood? I mean, I didn't like get a scratch and put corn on it and get it into the blood. I didn't do an injection of corn into my body. So when you do these food sensitivity panels and you see a lot of IgG antibodies against a whole bunch of different things that you eat, then you have to say, oh, that food is getting into my blood. And the way it gets into my blood is through a leaky gut, because there aren't any cells protecting it, so it can get straight in.
So what would be some of the symptoms that we may notice if we have leaky gut?
Most of the time, people don't notice anything at all. It's just, you know, they go on with their life. In fact, many people have like full-on celiac disease. They're gluten intolerant, and they go to the doctor, and the doctor does a biopsy and says, you have celiac disease. And they go, no, I'm fine. No gas, no bloating, no diarrhea, no constipation, no acid reflux. I can eat anything. I have an iron stomach. And they go, no, we did a biopsy. You have celiac disease. And so when they did this study and the people went off of gluten, they found unusual things, like their rashes went away, their dry skin went away, their urticaria, the itchy skin that they get went away. Their blepharitis went away. Their chronic allergic rhinitis went away. The chronic runny nose and postnasal drip went away. The asthma went away. All of these kind of irritating things like dandruff and all that stuff that was manifesting on the outside went away, because what we see on the outside is what is going on the inside, is a manifestation of what's going on the inside.
Wow.
So we don't always know. It could be things that we don't expect, like rashes. And you go, why are you getting a rash? Well, leaky gut could be one of the reasons.
Yeah, I hear more and more about that. In fact, years ago, you probably remember this, I had a Crohn's disease diagnosis many years ago in college. And then you had me do that panel, and I found that I had some wheats, I believe, and some milk proteins that had gotten into my blood. And so even just getting rid of those for a while made a huge difference for my health. So I just find that very interesting. Okay. What else? We have some questions that are coming in here too. Joe, I might let you find those questions if anything we have any to ask.
So we had somebody mention that they found us on YouTube, which is awesome. So glad you're here, Andy. And yeah, if you're watching this, whether live or recorded, we do have a YouTube channel, and you can subscribe to that. We just went over 500 subscribers, I think yesterday. So good to see that growing nice lately. But yeah, visiting bartonwebinar.com, you can register for this webinar. We have it every Tuesday at noon Central Time. And we also have links on that page for our Facebook page, our products, and other things there. So check out bartonwebinar.com. Let's see. Andy mentioned something about having leaky eyes, and I don't think that's related to the gut, but I don't know if that was partially a joke or not, but he's interested in diabetes and having some issues. Here's a follow-up. So yeah, he's noticed his eyes are watering quite a bit. Is that a bad sign related to diabetes at all?
Oh, not necessarily. And actually, it might even be something related to leaky gut, which is a funny thing, because you could have chronic rhinitis, which is the inflammation in the nose that causes a runny nose and having to blow your nose all the time, postnasal drip, which also can cause swelling around the tear ducts that drain your tears from your eyes into your nose. And if that's swollen, then the tears don't drain very well and your eyes water up really easily, and then you're always wiping tears out of your eyes, even though you're not crying or anything, because those tear ducts aren't draining into the nose the way they're supposed to. So watery eyes could have something to do with leaky gut or allergies, or even pollen in the air allergies. It doesn't have to be one thing. anything that causes swelling in your nose can block your tear ducts.
I actually went to my chiropractor yesterday. I've had a little bit of sinus issues and a little bit of watery eyes, seasonal, I think, but he actually hooked me up to a microcurrent. He had me wrap my hands or hold some like wet towels. And then he plugged in the microcurrent to it, and I laid down for like a half an hour, and it ran through my arms, and my neck was sore before that too. And somehow like that fixed everything. My neck wasn't sore. My sinuses cleared up. It was like, I don't know how he knew that, but that was very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. You know, in the nursing home for chronic wounds, people that have like chronic ulcers on their legs or feet, we use that microcurrent too to increase the flow of blood and allow healing faster. It actually improves healing.
So we had a question from Gordon. So how is leaky gut addressed once it's diagnosed?
Okay, that's an excellent question. That's the next step. Thank you for that segue, Gordon. Okay, if you think you have leaky gut or know you have leaky gut, either way, you can do the same thing. So the gut heals. It takes about 8 hours of emptying the stomach, of having an empty stomach, for you to start those. We talked a couple of weeks ago about stem cells. So the stem cells in your gut will be, they'll be activated after about 8 hours of fasting. So it's kind of important that people do that intermittent fasting, they call it, or have a certain period of time when the stomach is empty. And having the empty stomach repairs all of that stuff. And people, have you ever heard your stomach go gurgle, 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 and you go, oh, I'm hungry, I must need something to eat. And, but that is, what that gurgling is your stomach cleaning out. We don't often think about it, but our intestines are cleaner than our skin after we wash it with its anti-COVID-19 soap.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, you have 10 times more bacteria per square millimeter on your skin after washing with antibacterial soap than you do in your small intestine. It is so clean, but it needs time to clean out. And if you're eating all the time, it won't ever get clean. And that's where people get SIBO or SIBO and all of those kinds of issues, is they never get clean. But the repair also happens during that time. So the gut cleans out and repairs when the stomach is empty, and only when the stomach is empty. So a lot of people who are talking about, oh, never eat tomatoes because they're horrible, because they have a lot of lectins and they'll prevent your intestines from reproducing the cells. And that's true, but what they're not taking into account is the fact that if you go for a period of time with an empty stomach, more than 8 hours, you repair all of that. Everything gets fixed during that time. And the longer you do that, the more repair you get. So whether you have inflammatory bowel disease or irritable bowel syndrome or leaky gut syndrome, the most important thing is to have periods of time of an empty stomach. So let's say once a month, you went for 24 hours without eating or drinking anything. And that's no food, no water. And that means your stomach's empty the whole time. You produce a hormone called ghrelin. Ghrelin initiates this repair process in the stomach and intestines. You also kill off the bad bacteria that are growing in your large intestine during that period of time. So that's a really good thing. The optimal amount of time to repair is about 3 days. So your first day is when you initiate the repair, but the complete repair happens over about 3 days. So that would be 3 days with no food, no water. People go, what? No water? I have to drink water.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. What's the difference with no water?
Well, the key is the empty stomach. So the research with animals shows no food, no water is clearly better than a water fast. So you can't argue that. Okay, so the best way to fast is no food, no water. Well, you know, you can only go a certain amount of time, you know, whatever. So if you drink water, it's not a big deal. You still get a lot of the benefits, most of the benefits, you know, even during a water fast. And then if you're going longer and you add something like broth, then you still get the benefits if you do 5 days and you're just drinking broth once or twice a day. But remember that the key is to have an empty stomach. That's when you're doing the repair. That's when you're fixing all the problems.
So you'd probably even avoid any types of vitamins or supplements or anything that you normally would take as well, correct?
Absolutely. Think of your vitamins as food. Think of your herbs as food.
Mm-hmm.
Think of whatever else you're doing as food.
And then medications, do you typically recommend check with their doctor first, or?
Yeah, check with your doctor first. My experience has been people who are taking high blood pressure medications, during a fast, the blood pressure will come down to normal and you won't need the medications. And people who are taking diabetes medications during the fast, the blood sugar comes down to normal, you don't need the medications. So generally, if you want to ask your doctor, most of them don't learn anything about fasting because it's not something we're taught in medical school. So unless they've learned it outside of medical school, they'll say, well, I don't know, so don't go off your medications. But that might not be good advice, because if your blood sugar comes down to normal and you're on certain diabetes medications, then you could go too low and it'll cause hypoglycemia, which may be worse than having too high during that period of time.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned some other doctors, you know, teaching about not eating lectins and things. And Dr. Gundry is, you know, one of the I guess most popular doctors that advertises a ton. I mean, they're a huge company and stuff. They sell a lot of products. And so a question came in from Eve. If taking supplements to obtain a healthy gut and get rid of leaky gut, how long should someone stay on the supplement? I currently take Total Restore for leaky gut by Gundry M.D.
Okay. I've had an issue with this for a long time because, of course, I've had a lot of people come in with these kinds of things, and they bring in their bottles of Total Restore and all of that. And they're okay. But you have to remember that people that are selling you something are selling you something. And then you have to ask, is this right for me? Because the things that are being sold are often very good and very useful for certain people, but not for other people. And it's a problem I see all over the place. Especially like with diabetes, you have drugs you were given for diabetes, but the doctor never asked the question if that's the ones you need. They just say, well, let's start with this one and give you metformin. And that may not be what you need. You might need something else. And did they test for it? No, they don't usually test for it. They just say, try this. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, try that. It's the same kind of thing with supplements. It's not really any different. So you have to find out if that's what you need and how long you should be on it. It doesn't take long. If you're fasting, you can clean your gut out in a matter of 3 days. You can have it all cleaned and repaired and very nice. But people with long-standing things like celiac disease, it takes them months, 3 to 6 months to completely repair their intestines of having a completely gluten-free diet. So it's not, there's no specific number that I could say. It depends on how bad it was in the first place.
We had another question come in from Gary. And hi, Gary. I'm wondering if you're the same Gary I know from Sioux Falls, Gary Wexler. I had a stuffed nose for many years. I had a Vivar procedure in April of 2019. It helped somewhat, and I have been trying to determine if any medications or supplements may be the cause. Maybe it's my leaky gut. What tests do I need to take to determine AUSE? I think it's use. My stuffed sinuses also seem to affect my hearing, and my wife wants me to take a hearing test. And I'll say my wife does too, but that's because I'm sometimes.
Your wife wants him to take a hearing test.
Selective hearing. That's selective.
Selective hearing, but that might be different.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the answer to that question is not an easy answer, because the answer is yes and yes and yes and yes. All of those are possibilities. When you ask the question, is it possible? The answer is yes. You can even have people who say, You know, it's possible that life happened on Earth without any God creating it. But you have to then look at probability and say, you know, is that likely? So is it likely then that medications could be causing this? Yes. Is it likely that foods could be causing this? Yes. So you had that procedure that freezes all of your lining of your sinuses so that you can't make a lot of mucus, so that you have less of the dripping, the postnasal drip, and the congestion. But why did you need that in the first place? You know, what was it that you had to have that procedure because of a reaction that you were having in the first place? And that could definitely be from food. It could definitely be from leaky gut. The tests that I was talking about, there's several possibilities. You can look specifically for celiac disease by a blood test or an endoscopy, or you could do the IgG antibody, food antibody panel, and that if you have a lot of different things that you're eating that you find IgG antibodies, then it's likely that you have leaky gut. And the way out of it is really simple. And that is to do, or the best way to test even, is to do a elimination diet. That's where you eliminate all of the things that you might be sensitive to. And how do you know? Well, pick the worst offenders first. And Leslie just told us what the worst offenders are. Wheat and milk, clearly the worst offenders. So gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free is a good place to start. The other things are the things like Dr. Gundry talks about. Tomatoes are a big offender, peppers, potatoes, eggplant, those are the nightshade family.
That was my third allergy, nightshades.
Nightshades, yeah.
Or the third thing that came up, so yeah.
Yeah. So doing an elimination diet, you could go so far as to say, I'm only going to eat lamb because lamb doesn't have antibiotics and stuff in it, and rice for a couple of weeks. So you just have lamb and rice for a couple of weeks, and then you start adding things in one at a time. Now, that's only if all of your symptoms resolve. Because what if it's not food? What if it's pollen allergies? What if it's stuff in the air that you're breathing? What if you're allergic to mold and your house has mold? And that's what's causing the lining of the intestines to, or the lining of the nasal passages to swell up. It's not that simple, and it requires a lot of different tests. And so I use one that has multiple allergies in one test. So it looks at both pollens and molds and dust mites and cats and dogs, and then food sensitivities, IgG and IgE. So you get all of, so I get a kind of a broad spectrum, so I can say, it looks like, look, your problem is probably molds. You know, you don't have food stuff, you have mold stuff. So a broad spectrum test can be helpful.
All right, good. Let's see, we had a few more other questions coming in here. Leslie, I have to sneeze, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
We are live on Facebook right now too. So those of you who are watching there, be sure to post your questions because we would love to be able to answer those live. And I know that many of you may be new, but each week we talk about type 2 diabetes and then other topics that come up or that we're finding you know, a lot of our viewers have questions about. We try to incorporate those within the next week. So we want to hear from you. Post your questions, post your topics that you might be interested in. I believe next week we're actually going to be talking about brain health, which is very important and will be another exciting topic. But again, post your questions. I'm trying to see. Ernie is back. Oh, Ernie, we've missed you. So glad to have you back. Let's see if there's something in here. How do you get your doc to know what medications you need? That's probably a good question.
Test for everything. So sometimes the test is trying out a medication to see if it works for you. And sometimes it is doing a specific test that tells you whether you need that. So let's say you have diabetes and your blood sugar is high. Your doctor says, your blood sugar is high. So which of this long list of medications would be best for you? Well, there's things you can test for to know that. If you know what your insulin levels are, what your glucagon levels are, what your insulin resistance is, what your leptin levels. So if they test for all of the hormones, the metabolic hormones, then they can say, oh, you make a ton of insulin. So glipizide would be a horrible medication for you. You need something like metformin. And insulin would be a terrible medication because your pancreas is just overproducing this insulin. You have insulin resistance. So which medication will depend on what your status is. And so the doctor just needs to test. They just need to do what they do best, testing.
All right. I think we talked about the sinus issues. I wanted to talk a little bit more too. You know, you had talked about like a kind of this road rash type of thing happening, but how are we getting there? What are some other ways that we have inflammation? How do we get to that point?
Okay. The lining of the intestines is one cell layer. So anything that damages one cell makes a breach, you know, makes a breach in your, and so Dr. Gundry, we talked before, talks about lectins. Lectins are the immune system of plants. And so when you're eating plants, you're getting lectins. Some of them are worse than others, things like in the nightshades, for example, those are the worst ones. And what they do is they bind to the receptors on cells in your intestines and prevent them from reproducing. So that's why it's really important when you're making beans that you soak your beans and pour off the water and then boil them or pressure cook them so that you destroy the lectins in there so that the beans will then not have that problem. You know, a handful of raw red beans, like kidney beans, if you were to eat them, you know, crunch them up, there's enough lectins in there to even kill somebody. It's quite toxic. But when you soak them overnight and pour it off and put new water on and then boil them, then you destroy most of the lectins. So that's one way. Another way is infectious diseases. If you're not cleaning out your intestines, then you easily get infections. They can hide. They create a biofilm inside that allows them to stay in your intestines, and they're not getting cleaned out because you're eating too frequently. You don't give any chance for the stomach to be empty so it can clean your intestines can clean out because you have food going through it all the time. Another thing that wears away our intestines is our own enzymes. Think about it. Your pancreas is making enzymes that destroy what? Proteins. What are your cells made out of? Proteins. Fats. What are your cells made out of? Fats. Carbohydrates. What do your cells have? Carbohydrates. So all of those things are being broken down by these enzymes from your pancreas. Well, guess what? They're also breaking down your own cells during your digestive process and absorptive process. So all of the things that are surrounding food, just eating on a regular basis, cause wearing away of the lining of our intestines. So the simple thing to do is stop eating. Then you're not making pancreatic enzymes to break things down. You're not having any, putting any bacteria in there. You don't have any acid that breaks down the lining, or any of the toxins that are being produced or come from your food. So only during the time that you're not eating do you not have those things that wear away your intestines.
I would assume also then frequent bowel movements would be very important as well, removing toxins. So not eating, but also cleaning out the system. I hear a lot of people who often don't, we're talking toilet talk now, so often don't have bowel movements for days. And what type of an effect does that have on your body?
Most your bowel movement mostly comes from the large intestine and not the small intestine. So it's really important that we distinguish between those. What I'm talking about with the cleaning out and how it's super, super like almost sterile, your intestines are sterile, that's the small intestine. Your large intestine is where the bowel movements come from. And the gastroenterologists tell us in the research anywhere from 3 times a day to every 3 days is normal. So if you have a bowel movement every 3 days, that could be considered normal. Or if you have a bowel movement 3 times a day, that could be considered normal. The most important thing for bowel movements is texture. Bowel movement should be soft. If it's hard, then that's constipation. It doesn't matter how many times a day or how many times a week you have a bowel movement. If it's hard, it's constipation. And so that's where you get the diverticulosis and diverticulitis and hemorrhoids and all of the colon problems, or a lot of the colon problems come from constipation, having hard stool, which is fixable by generally fiber. Adding more fiber to your diet is the best way to have more frequent bowel movements, softer bowel movements, and continuous cleansing.
So now when you say fiber, I know a lot of people automatically think Miralax. What do you mean by fiber?
Not Miralax. No, that's like...
I know your thoughts on this, so I just, it's good to talk about it.
Miralax is an alcohol. It is polyethylene glycol. It is a antifreeze, kind of like what they use in cars. And because it's not digested, it's considered a great laxative because it's not absorbed into the body, and it goes into the colon and irritates the colon and causes more water to come in, and so you get it out. So as a laxative, it's not fiber. What it is an alcohol that you don't absorb. But if you have leaky gut, it can get into your blood and go to your liver, and it does do liver damage. So it's not completely benign, because if you have leaky gut, it's not healthy at all. So I try to avoid that one. Rarely use it. I have used it in the nursing home, but not very often. I try to avoid it. Fiber comes from fruit, vegetables, whole grains, beans, peas, lentils, and legumes, nuts, and seeds. So those, if you were to eat a vegan diet, you would have a lot of fiber, as long as you're eating whole foods. You know, in California, the vegans that I talked to are so funny. You know, this very unhealthy, overweight person came into me and said, "Oh yeah, I'm vegan. Yeah, I eat a really healthy diet. I'm vegan." "Oh, really? So what do you eat? Do you eat broccoli?" "No, I don't like broccoli." "Do you eat kale?" "No, I don't like kale." "Do you eat any vegetables?" "No, I don't like vegetables." I'm like, "What do you eat?" "Well, I have cereal and rice and pasta, and I have some corn sometimes." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So that's a terrible vegan diet. It doesn't have any fiber in it at all. So if you're going to eat a vegan diet, avoid anything processed, whether it's white flour, white sugar. Cereal is a terrible thing to eat. It actually is really bad for diabetes too, especially. Cold cereal is like the bane of my existence. I love that stuff, but I don't eat it. And so fiber is the fruit and vegetables, beans, peas, lentils, nuts, and seeds. So those are the things that are really healthy for your body.
Okay, that's good. We do have a question here from Renee. Can pain raise your sugar levels? And can you get prediabetes or diabetes from chronic pain?
Oh, that's a great question. And the answer is absolutely yes. I remember telling a story a while back about Julie, who was very overweight and had diabetes. And we could not get her blood sugar down ever. And it was a terrible thing. Multiple medications and injecting insulin, her blood sugar would not come down. Then her daughter moved out of her house and got her own apartment. And her blood sugar went down to normal and stayed normal. She didn't have diabetes. Just the stress of living with her daughter, they were fighting like all the time. Just stress of living with her daughter caused her to have diabetes. And when she no longer had that stress, she no longer had diabetes. She was still overweight. She was still eating the same junk food. Everything was the same, except she no longer had high blood sugar. So the example of chronic pain is a similar kind of issue. If you're in pain all the time, that's a big stressor. And that's making your adrenal hormones come out, which is making you resistant to insulin just because of the stress. And if you relieve the pain, then the stress hormones go away, and your insulin could come down to normal, and your sugar can come down to normal just by relieving the pain.
Wow. Okay. We did talk a little bit about this, but this question is from Ray. I'm a type 2 diabetic, 50 pounds overweight, and he is doing 3 to 4 day fast cycles. His wife is concerned that this is too much fasting. Is this cycle safe until I hit my goal, which is 20% body fat?
Okay, safety. Okay, how do we define safety? Okay, here is a safe way to fast. If you take your current body weight and subtract your ideal body weight, you get a number. And if it's the same, then your number is 0. And if it's, if your current body weight is 10 pounds more than your ideal body weight, then you have the number 10. That's the number of days you can safely fast. Whether you do it 10 in a row, or whether you do it 1 and then wait a week and do 1 and then wait a week and do 1 and do 1, doing cycles, it doesn't matter how you do it. Either way, it works about the same. Ideally, if you do about a 3-day cycle, that's kind of an optimal place to be. So that's what he's talking about. So I think the 3 to 4 day cycles that you're doing are great. That's a really good way to do it, and it's very safe. There's no way you can go wrong with this. Even if you ate 0, nothing at all for 3 days, and then ate for a week, and then or whatever, how many days, and then do another 3-day cycle, another 3-day cycle, until you get to your ideal body weight, it doesn't matter. You can do it any way you want. Some people, I've had people do 30 days of water only in a row, just 30 days of water and nothing, no food at all. There have been reports of, I think I've told this story, many of you have heard it, of somebody in Scotland in 1968 that went a year and 18 days with no food, no calories. He weighed 477 pounds, so he lost about 300 pounds in that year of no food. He drank water, he drank tea, black tea, and he took a vitamin pill. That's it for over a year. So you can burn the fat on your body as fast as you want, or take as long as you want. Either way is fine.
Wow, I'd like to meet some of those people. So I need to learn
about
the
477-pound guy.
Well, they're mental. I mean, just where they are mentally to be able to do that is pretty amazing. So I think you just get to that point where you're ready and you can do it. So anyway, that's awesome. Okay, Ray says thank you. Janice is asking, what about fiber supplements?
Fiber supplements are fine. They're not ideal, but some people need them. And the fiber supplements like Citracel, which is the citrus fiber, eat oranges. I don't know. It's okay either way. Or you can get the psyllium seed fiber, which some people do very well with and other people don't. The psyllium seed fiber that you have to be careful of is they usually put a lot of sugar in it. So if you look on the bottle, you're like, oh my gosh, there's 20 grams of sugar in one serving of this fiber supplement. That's because it doesn't taste good. But if you get the non-sugar ones, unsweetened ones, and mix it in, mix it in your yogurt, mix it in your food and stuff like that, that would be okay. But ideally, if you get the fiber from a natural source, which is the food itself, you're better off, because then you're getting different types of fiber. It's not only the same kind all the time. So, for example, there's one source of fiber that's only found in chicory root and jicama. And so if you go, oh, I'm not going to eat chicory root, that's nasty stuff. And so, but jicama is really good. And that has a certain fiber that grows the good bacteria in your intestines. It very strongly, very well. Whereas other kinds of things like beans and peas have different kinds of fiber than nuts and seeds, or bran cereal, for example. So a variety of different kinds of fiber helps grow the good bacteria in your intestines better.
Awesome. Okay, a reminder, those of you on Facebook, I won't be on for very much longer, but if you have questions, post them there. If you have not registered for this webinar, you can do so at bartonwebinar.com. You'll also find a link to our YouTube channel, lots of good information, some information about supplements, our diabetes solution kit, all the goods. You'll find all the goods there.
Yeah,
Next
actually,
week,
Leslie, I was gonna do a quick screen share and just kind of show
sure.
people that website quick if I could. Let's see
Perfect.
if this works. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Share. All right. How are we doing here?
Awesome.
Okay.
Woohoo! Look at
So
that.
here is bartonwebinar.com. And
Hey, look, there's me.
hey, that looks a lot like you, Scott.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, if you haven't registered yet, you can do so here. And this is mostly for people watching the replays of this. And then, so right here is a link to our YouTube channel. And so if you click on this, then you can find actually all of our other videos. If you click on videos, you should be able to see, you know, we've got all sorts of stuff in here. So we've had a lot of questions on fasting and stress, immune systems, you know, all that good stuff in here. So just click on that from here. Feel free to watch all of our videos and also click on the subscribe button so you can get notified whenever we have a new video come out. Also, a lot of you have already purchased the diabetes solution kit from us, which is right here. But if you haven't, this is our ebook that we've been selling for over 10 years now. We've sold over 1 million copies. We've got, I think we're on edition number 9 right now. And this is where you'll learn all about reversing type 2, getting phase 1, going through phase 1, 2, and 3 so you can get your blood sugars down to normal. And Dr. Saunders is a big contributor of this. We've got recipes, meal plans, all sorts of stuff. So you can just click on that and you can buy the download version for $19.97. Easy peasy. And then also Dr. Saunders recorded a bunch of videos. We put them into 6 parts, but he basically goes and explains all of the what's inside the solution kit. And you can get that from this link. I think we've got that on sale today as well for $19.97. So that is a good deal. You actually get both. So you might as well get this one. Also, you can see the supplements that we have here. Cinechroma, this is for blood sugar support. This has cinnamon, chromium, vanadium, selenium, vitamin D3, and vitamin K2. All of these are really good for blood sugar and immune system support as well. Healthy metabolism. This is our best-selling supplement. And you can get that here as well. And if you order the six bottles, you can get it a lot cheaper per bottle. And on top of that, we have a special coupon code for people on the webinar. If you type in webinar 25, I believe, webinar 25, that coupon code is going to give you 25% off any supplements you buy. So if you want help with blood sugar, we've got our own healthy gut support formula right here. This is actually a new and improved formula just released last week, I believe. This is prebiotics, probiotics, and digestive enzymes. Same thing here. You can get, if you buy more, you get lower per bottle price. You can also save 25%. So Nervala is for nerve pain and neuropathy. And this has got 2 ingredients. We have a webinar on this that you can go and watch to learn more about. And then turmeric BP is really good for inflammation and all sorts of things. So anyways, that's my own little promo of what we've got going on here. If you want any more information, just go to bartonwebinar.com. And I will go back to you, Dr. Saunders.
Thank you. That was awesome. And fast. It's like you've done this before.
I have once or twice. Not the screen share though. That's the first time sharing the screen. So
that's good. We do have a few more questions. So let's do a couple of those. This is interesting because I actually have tried this. What about potato starch for good bacteria?
Potato starch is a starch that we mostly digest. And ideally, we would digest and absorb it. Now, potatoes also have fiber in them, and it's really the fiber in potatoes, which is a sort of like a starch that we don't digest. that helps to grow good bacteria. So it can be very useful. Potatoes are good for you in many different ways. But if you're on the if you're on phase 1 of the diabetes reversal solution kit, then don't eat potatoes because they have a lot of that starch that we use and is made into sugar.
That's good. Okay, we'll see how fast I can do these questions. This is from Gary, and Joe, this Gary is from San Pedro. So not from
there's 2 awesome Gary Wexlers in this world.
Yes, that's cool. When you go on a water fast, besides losing the fat, do you lose muscle, which is hard to build back?
Yes, the answer is yes. The research has been done on this extensively, but what's really interesting is they can show, if you look at, where do you go? It's Dr. Walter Longo at USC and Longevity Research Center, and he showed that during a fast you lose muscle and then you gain it back plus a little more after the fast, pretty quickly after the fast, and then you fast again, you lose a little bit of muscle, you'll gain it back plus a little bit more. And so you actually overall, when you do periodic fasting, you gain muscle more than you lose.
Wow, very cool. Okay, let's see. Krish says, does bloating and gas result from leaky gut? External enzymes help, but as you just told us, when the pancreas secretes digestive enzymes, too much external enzyme supplements may not be good, as it may act on the intestinal tissue.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, you only take the digestive enzymes when you're eating, you know, when with the food. You want to digest the food, not your intestines. Bloating and gas comes from either you're swallowing it, which we swallow a lot of gas, and sometimes it's funny things like dehydration. When you're dehydrated, you make foamy saliva, and you're swallowing more foam than saliva, and because of that, you're getting a lot of gas in your intestines as it's going down. Now you may burp some of that up, but some of it goes down into your intestines, and you can get some bloating from that. Most bloating and gas is caused by intestinal bacteria. Remember, the small intestine is essentially sterile, or mostly sterile. And if you start growing a bunch of bacteria and they're feeding on that starch that you're eating, or whatever it is you're eating, then they're going to start making gas, and that's called SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And so the bloating and gas isn't necessarily from leaky gut, but they are often associated, just because when you have the bacteria growing in your intestines, you usually also have leaky gut with it, but it's not a direct cause at all. So the issue is exactly the same. You stop eating, you give a period of time. 3 days is a great amount of time to repair the lining of the intestines, and drinking enough water so that you have enough fluids for your intestines to secrete the soap to clean out your small intestine, and to get the bacteria down into your large intestine where it's supposed to be.
Okay. All right, guys, here's our final question for today. Here we go. This is coming from Terry. What happens when you fast for even 2 days, but your sugar level drops so low that you begin to shake or feel weak? What should I do?
Okay. Low blood sugar, hypoglycemia, it's a problem. And it's not a problem at all, and it's a terrible problem. And what do I mean by that?
We'll end. That'll be the end of the webinar. We'll just leave it right there.
It's a paradox, because if you don't get hypoglycemia, then you don't fix the glucose transport proteins, GLUT1 proteins that are in your brain, for example. You need occasional hypoglycemia to balance those and to make more of them, so that you get the right amount of sugar into your brain, because your brain has to run on sugar all the time. So having hypoglycemia by itself is really not much of an issue. Yeah, it feels bad, it feels horrible. And you definitely don't want to get, like, people that inject insulin and they get hypoglycemia down into the 20s. Well, they can go into a coma and do brain damage. You don't want to do that. But hypoglycemia in the range that you're going to get, like in the 50s if you measure your sugar. It gets 60s, 50s, and you start feeling weak and tired, and I got to go to bed, I got to eat something. That's actually not bad for you at all. In fact, it's really good for you. Like kind of like when you're working out, you get sore muscles. No pain, no gain kind of thing. So by itself, if you can power through the hypoglycemia, that's okay, because you can't get blood sugar into the 20s if you're not injecting insulin or anything. You're not going to get too low to where you could do brain damage or go into a coma. But you may feel bad. You may feel weak and tired and headache and all that stuff from hypoglycemia. And as you do that, you're training your body I need to burn fat. Normal people, when we stop, when the sugar goes down and starts going away, we just immediately switch to fat burning, and the energy stays the same all the time. And, I can go all day now. I used to get really grumpy when I got hypoglycemia, but I can go all day now. If I'm focused on something, working on something, and I'll go, oh, I haven't eaten all day. And I won't even realize that I've missed meals because I don't get that anymore. So you train your body to immediately switch to fat burning when your blood sugar drops low. And that's the process.
Wow. Okay. I think Joe is going to ask a question.
Yes,
Right?
I had one last question that's related to this, and then I'll close us out here. So, all right. So I went to the chiropractor, like I said yesterday, and he's a little strange. So he's like, I noticed you haven't been pooping very well lately, Joe. He's like, you need to take 8,000 milligrams of vitamin C. I'm like, okay. And so I did yesterday. I actually fasted yesterday as well. So, but I was kind of curious, like vitamin C is good for you, but you get to a certain level, like your body takes all it needs, and then it basically it gets rid of the rest of it, right? How does that work? Like, how does vitamin C, first of all, how does your body know how much it needs? And second of all, is vitamin C a good like cleanser, like to like clean out your system?
Well, that is a part of, there's several questions in that are long answers that could take a long time, but let me see if I can explain it briefly.
Okay.
The system in your intestines is not a passive system. It's an active, intelligent system. When you need vitamin C, you actually make more receptors and more proteins that absorb vitamin C into your body. And actually, it's kind of the same thing that they use for glucose. So B vitamins and all those, when you need more, then you make more receptors, and you have a greater ability to absorb that nutrient. So Dr. Cathcart did a whole bunch of research on vitamin C in the 1950s, and he found that when people got sick, they could take 10 times more vitamin C and not get diarrhea. So what is the diarrhea? Why does it act as a laxative? Well, if you're putting an acid, ascorbic acid, into the large intestine where it's not supposed to be acidic, then the large intestine goes, oh, that's irritating, and it creates a diarrhea reaction where you just expel all of that. So and so it makes you poop right away, just like a laxative. And it's exactly what you said, Joe, because you didn't absorb all of it, and some of it got down into your large intestine, and then that's where it gets expelled and acts as a laxative. So if you were sick, that 8,000 milligrams, you could probably take 10 or 12 or even 20,000 milligrams and not get diarrhea, because you would absorb all of that vitamin C.
Okay.
Very interesting.
Yeah, well, good stuff. Well, hey, this has been great. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person here in a couple days, actually tomorrow. So
yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah, we get to spend some time together with the whole team. So that's going to be great. And well, so thanks again to everybody that's joined us. Love having you on here as well. Lots of great questions. There's a few that we didn't get to, but we will be back here next Tuesday, Lord willing. And we'll answer more questions. In the meantime, yeah, check out our other videos on YouTube. Register if you're watching this later. And thanks, everybody. God bless. Take care. We'll see you next time. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.